today, so remember, once again, these are our workshop areas. So these are much more intimate. They're much more targeted for you, for people with a specific interest. And so this one is kind of like an in between because it's unique in a number of different ways. Because this is a human who is incredibly versatile with one of the biggest hearts that I know of, and is just like someone I turn to all the time for advice and how to think about the world. Is just amazing. And so we have Vinay Reddy here, I get to say he's a good friend of mine. But a bit about his background, hometown of Dayton, Ohio. So any Ohio people out here, props to you all. A place where I got to spend part of my summers, and has an awesome aerospace industry, and the Wright Patterson Air Force Base and museum is there. So if you're over there, get to do that. He was a tennis star and played in college at Miami University. He's been on multiple campaigns. So anytime I'm like, how do I think about a political campaign? I call him because he's the guy who actually knows how they work on the inside, how things really happen. Uh, he's also been a speechwriter to some of the most important speeches and topics in the past decade. He's been the front guy and the voice of conscience on so many important issues, on these things. And actually, the speechwriter is the one that controls the pen. And so some of the critical roles. He was also the first Asian and first Indian American head speechwriter for a president. And so he's first on many fronts. He was also the VP of Strategic Communications for the NBA, personal advisor to Adam Silver, commissioner of the NBA. So we're going to be able to talk the sports angle as well as the politics angle, as well as the cultural angle for the country. And he's on speed dial to many of the top superstars in the NBA and many of the top filmmakers and thinkers and tastemakers in Hollywood. And he's the guy that gets called. And part of the reason I even know any of those people is thanks to him. And so here's why I wanted to have this workshop. And I think it's so important for everybody here. First, if there's somebody I think of about what it means to take to, like, what does it take to storytell? Like, it's one thing to talk about storytelling and think about it and just say, oh, I'm just putting together an Instagram reel or doing something like that. There's another thing to do it in the harshest of all spotlights. When it's the presidency, it's a campaign, it's NBA superstars, it's the commissioner of the NBA. You're talking about some of the biggest brands, and you're talking about an environment where every single word is scrutinized and people are out to get you, where people are out to weaponize anything you've said. They're looking to take it out of context. And so, how do you storytell in that harshest of all spotlights? What does it take to storytell in this new world of media? And as sports is changing, we're in this interesting environment where sports is changing in a radical way with college athletes being able to get paid, new contracts, and we'll get into some of those things. And then really to talk also about how the digital medium is changing. Vinay's had a front seat from that over multiple administrations and as a storyteller and on campaigns. And so he's seen the world go from traditional comms. When I say comms, I mean communications. Seeing traditional comms go from that classic, like, here, we're going to put a press release out, to an influencer world, and thinking about how things are going to change with that. And most of all, this is a place for you guys to get to ask your questions directly and interact with Vinay and get this much more personal time. And so I just want to first say thank you, brother, for being here and being willing to help this amazing group out.
Great to be here. And first, thanks to DJ. He's all the kind of things he said about me is received and reciprocated to him. He's that person to so many people, and the fact that he and everyone on the team pull this whole summer endeavor for you all is pretty incredible and it's a small taste of the kind of person he is. So happy to talk
Thank
about
you.
anything. Feel free to ask me questions. Everyone listening to, just I'm here to help, and let's get at it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just throw a few questions out to get us rolling, and then I want everyone else to be able to layer in here, because I have my list of to-do questions I always want to ask Vinay, and I'm always looking, so I could easily fill out many, many hours of questions. But the one I want to start with, because I know a little bit about these stories, but like I think it's helpful to get people a little bit of kind of color into this, which is the start, it's like starting on the politics and policy side before moving over to the sports is like, I think a lot of people here have expressed like, how does someone get on a political campaign? Like, what does it look like to actually be able to get a job in policy or politics or these different things? We have a lot of people who are early in their undergrad career to people who are graduating, and we have campaigns coming up. We're in a midterm right now, and we're going to have a presidential election here just before we know it. So it may feel far off, but the campaigns are just beginning to start to ramp up. So maybe talk to us about like just like for people who are like, how do I even start a career that way? Which is a question I know you have gotten many times, but it's helpful to orient people to like, what is the job trajectory?
Sure. So in a lot of ways, it's not too different from what you're all experiencing now. Where do you start? Whether it's, you're into technology or into whatever field is, the question is like, where do you even go? And for me, I didn't have sort of the network of people to know how to even ask. So we didn't come from my family. It wasn't like we're interested in issues, but how do you actually go work on a campaign, or do you know anybody? We didn't like that was this zero background for us. And so a lot of times it's just, you kind of have to do a hustle. So my first campaign was right out of college, so right around the age of you guys, and I went back to my hometown. There was an open race, and at the time, since I'm going to date myself, this was in 2001. I just graduated, and so there's a lot of issues going on in the country. Many of you maybe weren't even born then, but there's war, there's a lot of distrust and a lot of things going on, and so I was like, I don't know. I graduated from college. I had a degree in poli sci and philosophy. I was thinking about law school, but I didn't want to go right away. And so I was like, well, let me go back home. There is this thing happening in my hometown. Let me just go and show up. So I showed up, I volunteered, did everything from answer phone calls to mail, hard mail, actually envelopes and stamps. I drove the candidate around. And in a lot of ways, like that's kind of where you start. You got to
You're
start
literally the drive.
somewhere.
You're like the chauffeur.
Yeah, literally driving the Canon around. And, the thing there and kind of where you're all at right now is you want to be a sponge. You want to be there where you're just there to learn, but not just to sort of, be so ambitious that you're trying to think about the next thing already. You're there to be a sponge. Like whatever they're asking me to do, like I want to learn it. I want to be good at it. I want to be the person they know they can trust and rely on, even if my thing is such a small task in the larger enterprise at that age and that sort of stage in your life, you want to just learn. You got to learn all the things before you can kind of keep going up. And so it was a long shot campaign. We got crushed. We weren't even close, but you learned a lot and you built a lot of great relationships with people. You saw what it takes to win. You know how it feels to lose. You have all these the personal stuff. It's your hometown, so you learn a lot more than where you just were living in it. You were actually sort of like learning about all the different communities. So a lot of times just showing up. The other piece is so fast forward, I ended up going to law school, but even when I was in law school, I didn't think I wanted to practice. I just kind of wanted to sort of be more maybe policy making, or I was thinking about civil rights kind of work, advocacy. And at the time, I worked actually in music. So I went to New York City, and there's this composer named Philip Glass. He's now in his 90s. He's very well known,
I should
sort
say
of.
the Philip Glass.
Yeah, so he's Oscar nominated for scores, but he does operas. He also, plays with, you know, big band, like famous rock bands. And so he's got this very eclectic story. And he had written an opera in 1980 called Satyagraha in Sanskrit that was about Dr. King and Mahatma Gandhi, and the Metropolitan Museum or Metropolitan Opera House in New York was performing it. And I had worked during a summer at a nonprofit that did sort of like foreign policy, international relations work. And my boss there was his friend was like, "Hey, I know you're graduating from law school. Philip needs some help, kind of just doing a hodgepodge job." And so I took the job. I'm in Ohio. I moved to New York, and I'm not from that art world. So, he's friends with all kinds of musicians and poets and writers. And, the goal was to raise awareness of his opera, work with different opera houses, and, you do it. And so music houses and museums, and you write pitches to reporters to cover it. You apply for grants for funding. You just walk around the city trying to like figure it out. It was an amazing experience. And for him, he was really about the story. So, the first time I met him, we went to this dive Indian restaurant. I don't know if who all are from New York, sort of in Curry Hill, like 23rd and Lex, there's a whole strip of nondescript Indian restaurants, Pakistani restaurants, Bangladeshi restaurants. And we sat down and he starts to talk about how, his music is very much influenced by an Indian musician named Ravi Shankar, one of sort of the famed Indian musicians, and how he really thought about story. So Philip's music, even if you've never heard of it, it's not for everybody. It's repetitive. There are no words. It's sort of, he bases it on, he tells me in Indian music, there's this thing called a raga. It's a note. It's very repetitive and sort of meditative. So he bases his music over there, and he's really saying like, this is how I think about the story I'm telling when I don't have words. So music is very much about emotion. It is about the range. Like, if for those of you who play music or like music, you know how it feels, even when you play or when you listen. And so when you do that, and then you take a big topic like, Dr. King's life or Gandhi's life, you have to pair it with something visual on stage. And so there's a lot going on. And so he's taught me a lot about sort of how to think about story. And at the time, Barack Obama in 2008 got the nomination. This thing with Philip ended. I went back to Ohio. I was like, I feel inspired by what's going on. I want to be involved in somehow. So then again, like because I had that experience in an earlier campaign, I asked them, like the people I worked with, and they're like, well, since you're in law school now, maybe just do some voter protection. So I just basically sat at polls and made sure people got to vote. And if there was a hotline, if there were any issues, then that hotline would go to lawyers who are actually litigating the cases. And so sometimes you just show up. So you take an initial experience, you learned and you were sponge. And even though you weren't a senior member of the team, you knew like the elements of what's required. You go out and you get some other experience doing something else. And for me, that was really about the story and how you tell it and sort of how do you think about it, the elements that go into it from not a speechwriter. This is a musician steeped in music theory and history, culture, world cultures, taking bits that he learned from another country, applied it over here, fused it to something new, paired with, you guys are too young for when Obama was the nominee. He's very, one of the great orators. But even then, by the time he started, till we can talk about by the time he ended, how much changed in terms of was even his oration and his speeches, noticed the way when they first started. And so he won, and then I was like, I want to be part of this somehow. And I just got married. My wife is a physical therapist, and she's like, you just graduated law school, and what are we going to do? And there at the time, so many people wanted to go work to Washington, work in administration, and so like just floods of resumes are going everywhere. And I had learned that my home state senator, Sherrod Brown, became a senator when I first started there, was looking for a speechwriter. And he used to be in the House, and the House of Representatives have much smaller staff. So like maybe, for every, staff member that someone in the House has, a senator has like two or three people for that. And so everyone just kind of has to do stuff. So what he was noticing was, and he's not like a written speech. He writes something. He's not going to read it. He's going to like read it and then kind of do his thing. But he felt like I was getting seven different versions of writing from really smart people. So it could be about, auto policy on auto rescue. It could be healthcare. It can be whatever issue. And the really smart people work on it, but he's getting like all these different ways of doing it. And he's like, this is taking too much of my time to like then think about how am I going to say it. So this is another lesson for you. So even though I had that initial experience, it wasn't a big enough experience that would get my resume like noticed. And so I sent my email to the black hole in HR address. Then I cold emailed the chief of staff. And the chief of staff in these offices is like the most important person in the office because they're the ones who work directly with the member of Congress or the candidate. They operationalize the entire office, and and I just cold emailed him, never heard from him. So this is in November of 2008. Turns out I learned later he was joining the administration himself, so he was busy sort of transitioning. And then I got an email in December asking if I was interested in coming in for an interview because he had forwarded my stuff to the communications director. So the lesson there is like persistence helps. I cold emailed this chief of staff multiple times, never heard. And in my follow-up emails, I wasn't a jerk about it either. It's another lesson, just like don't be a jerk. Like be persistent, but be like know that fine line between like being a jerk and being just like honest and good and trying to do the right thing. So, and then I get this email on a Sunday if I'm able to come in on a Wednesday into Washington. I was still in Ohio, and I had put my friend's DC address on the resume because I wanted to show that like, I was there and ready to go. And so I jump on a plane and I read everything I could. I read all of shared speeches. I listened to his radio interviews. His wife is a Pulitzer Prize winning author, and so I read her book, which is a book about being a spouse on a political campaign, even when you yourself are such an accomplished person, and what's sort of the gender dynamics. Her name is Connie Schultz, really funny. You should read her stuff. And so the first question I get is like, "Hey man, like you seem great, but you've never written a speech before. You've never worked on Capitol Hill before. I have like a huge stack of really amazing candidates from all over the place. Like why should we even, interview you?" And then this is a lesson for y'all. Like you gotta just like you got to know why you're doing it, and you got to make your pitch like so specific to the person that you're in front of and the cause they're about that it makes them feel like, oh yeah, of course, like this is the person. So I did say like, look, I know you have a lot of people. This is the only place I sent my stuff to. I grew up in Ohio. My family immigrated here. K through law school, public school, my brother, like the whole thing. My parents live in the same house, and I believe everything's shared. You kind of just like you make it so. And the most important thing is you're honest about it. All those things are true. It is true. That was the only place I interviewed. It's also true I didn't know how to apply to other places, so I knew how to do here, but I didn't get that part. But you're just like you got to be honest with yourself about why you want to do it and why you believe in that person or the thing you're about to join or wanting to join versus just saying like or presenting as though you're just using this as like a rung up to the next ladder. Like they're really it's important to have ambition, but if you don't have like perspective, that's the ambition's gonna it's like a killer. It is like it'll sort of later on sort of test your morals. It will test, really is that what you want to do? DJ knows we've been in really tough situations where that's actually the line. That's like the thread that you gotta like you're gonna find that in your career. You maybe you found it already in your life in various situations, and so you gotta just like trust your gut and your instinct about it, but accumulate all the experience that help you do that in that moment. So I got the job, and at the job at the time it was, and so even before I got the job, I did 5 interviews, I did writing tests, I had to sort of really prove my worth. And as you're going through the process, and you'll see this too, it gets narrow and narrower. Eventually, I met with Sherrod in person, and his first thing was like, it doesn't bother me that you never worked here or you've never written a speech. I've seen the stuff you do. Let's just chat. Let's just talk. And then in that moment, that's where, the relationship is it has to be obviously he's the boss, and so do you take that authority as what it should deserve. He's really thinking about, you know, who are you as a person, as a thinking partner? Can you bring me good ideas? Can you not be a yes person? Can you be challenging, but at the same time, can you take direction? Can you work with people from all levels of the staff, from his own driver, who, when I'm not in DC, he's in Ohio, is driving him around, knows who's the people he's meeting with, and you can get stories from them. So a lot of this becomes your core competency. You got to be good at what you're supposed to be doing. So in this case, you have to be a good writer. Like, okay, you could be a good writer, but then there are all these other things you got to be good at. Are you a good listener? Are you a good colleague? Do you have a way to think beyond the actual particulars of the policy? Do you know who your audience is? Like for him, it was always about don't write for, the camera, write for, the nurse in Cincinnati who's on that shift and who's upset about the way the healthcare system is working, and we're debating this law. So whatever this law is about, it should be for her. And can you explain it? Or you should explain it to people who don't follow this stuff. And so you kind of early tests for how you sort of do that. So the break in the politics, long story is a lot of times like show up, go to an event, express your interest, use that later on. I think the benefit of you guys doing a summer like this, you now have people you can ask, and so now you email DJ and DJ will email me, or we have a whole sort of network that is invaluable. Like it is a way to sort of really broaden your reach and your interest. And then you just got to work really hard and you got to believe and you got to just work really hard. Like do what you got to do what you're asked. By the end of it, the people remember you. And I will get to this later on is actually because of that experience in 2000 and in the early years, I got noticed when the Obama-Biden reelection campaign in Chicago was looking for a writer. So they reached out to me. And when I worked on that campaign, 4 years later or 3 years later, Vice President Biden's office reached out to me because they remembered me working on an issue with them 3 years before, and I didn't even notice they were like looking at me. So, just you got to put yourself out there,
Well,
show
Vinay,
up.
let me highlight a couple things, and I want to ask you a follow on here, and I want to get to a bunch of these questions because they're so good. The first is I want to highlight the importance of persistence, and throwing an email out there once versus following up and not being a jerk about it, and just being persistent and hacking in there. And then the second is being willing to do the grunt work. Like no, there's no privilege. It's like whatever it needs to do. If you need to be chauffeur, great. You need to go get coffee, great. You do things, and then always being a great teammate and laddering up in there. Like do what it takes to win. Don't play for second place. Like go win. Read the books. Read all the material. Luck favors prepared. Doing all those things. The thing I want to ask you about this is because I've seen this at firsthand, just to share a little bit. I've seen, then Vice President Biden and then President Biden sort of be in a room and then say, basically, where's Vinay? Where's Vinay? Because he's turning to you to be almost another judge of how is the world looking at this, another form of a moral compass, parallax, if you almost call it. What does it take to go from, hey, you're on the team, to becoming that level of trusted where somebody can be like, I need this person in the room because I trust them so much that I want their opinion above the rest of the people that are here.
Yeah, it's a great question. You just have to, the way you earn it is you show it. And so in this role in particular, people have especially when you're writing for somebody, they have their own voice, they have their own way of doing it. And so even if you yourself would say something differently, in the end, that person is accountable for what it is. And your job is to then channel your experience and how you might say and think about it, but also pair it with like, okay, well, in the end, this is what this person's about. So whether it's a president, whether it's, an NBA player, they have their own sort of public and personal way of talking even, but also really what they're about. And really to earn it is you recognize that. So a lot of people are great writers. I've had amazing writers reach out, be interested in helping, and they write amazing things, like pages and pages of great stuff. But in the end, like it's not usable in the way that I need it to be usable. It's like, well, he just would, someone wouldn't say it this way. They would say it sort of this way, and this is how you kind of do it. And so you got to listen, you got to get the reps in, but earn the reps. You got to listen and get it right. So the first edit you get, see why that edit's made, and don't make that mistake again. It's not a mistake. Learn from it and just know like even if I would do it this way, I know they like it this way. So this is what it is. And so you pair it with that. So it's a lot of it's listening, it's learning, it's like actually showing that you're not doing the same thing they asked you not to do before. And then it is speaking up. And so that job and a lot of these jobs, you'll find yourself in whatever situation is, your job is to speak up, is to bring your perspective and all of your experience there to the conversation, the debate in the room. And sometimes you get it, sometimes they agree, sometimes they don't. But the process is to be confident enough to do it. And so that confidence comes with you just get the reps. By the time I was doing those right, by the time I was writing the White House, that was like 5, 7 years of writing for a whole bunch of people, everyone from candidates to teachers and nurses about to introduce President Obama in front of a bunch of people to celebrities who are on the stump to you just get lots of reps in. And so this is the other thing for you all to really think about is whatever you feel your thing is, just like do it. Find all the different ways to do it. For me, writing was I wasn't really a writer growing up. I like to read. I like to watch things more than read or write. Um, but the more reps you get, the more way you think about it. So for me, I liked listening to things, but I pay a lot more attention to music lyrics now than I ever did because it's pretty amazing. Think of your favorite song. Ask yourself, why is it your favorite song? Why in like 30 words or 40 words that person was able to make you listen to that song on repeat thousands of times. And a lot of times it's a simple, clear story. It has an emotion, a connection, and they're able to do that. And so you kind of learn the different ways to do that. And I think for in me and being in these situations, they understood that I had a range of those perspectives in mind. I kept in mind as the process was going through, what is his voice? What is the policy? What are we trying to solve? Who are we actually trying to reach? And did you even think about that person? So a lot of times it'd be, don't be too smart for your own good. Like call your friend who doesn't care about this stuff, and if you can explain it and they can understand it, that's what we need to know. Call your parents, call your mom. Your mom's gonna be smarter than you, so like talk to her and can she understand it? Because she know what you're doing. So
Mhm.
it was really earn that trust that I wasn't just taking the dense stuff. I wasn't just like, in the middle of the squirm between, who's wanting this and that. You try to be the honest broker in that process.
Mhm. I just want to highlight something as a trend also here. We've talked about this also is like pick your favorite analogy, time on field, time on stage. The more you're in front, like on the field rather than just in practice equally important, but you need time in front of like on the stage in the field. Pick your favorite analogy. The more you're going to get there, the more mistakes you're going to get, and then you're going to iron them out, and then you'll be in this suddenly in this space where you're just better, honestly. And we all kind of go through that. It's kind of it is the process by how you do it. That's why we're asking you to demo so often. That's why we're asking you to fill out your progress struggles plan every day. Is these reps count? They're making you better over time. um
On
but
that
I
on that point, on that last point, staring at a blank page, that is really hard. Like, where do you even start? Now, you have a lot more tools to help you get started. But man, if you can get the reps now, what you guys are even doing this summer, like, God, where do I even start? Like, what am I even really trying to do? Just even now, you're doing it way more in advance of your life than DJ and I and a whole bunch of people
Mhm.
ever did. And so even just that, getting started, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And that's such an important thing that just keep at it. Like I know it can be stressful and scary sometimes, but man, just like keep grinding out. Like just every day, like here's the blank page today. What am I filling it out with? And just go. Sometimes a lot of the stuff won't work, but it gets you started. It gets you kind of moving.
Totally. All right, I want to get to some questions right here, and maybe the first one. Uh, I think I'm gonna get this correct because this is Lane, who I was chatting with in one of the rooms last night, and Mahet. So maybe Lane, you can actually go ahead and ask your question,
Yeah, hi, my name
and
is
say where you're from.
I'm currently in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm going to Georgia Tech through their online master's program in data analytics. I had a few questions, but I think I'm gonna more narrow it down to ones that are maybe a little more pertinent to right now, probably the current climate. Um, there there was a book that just came out, the 15 or 25, I think it was 15 most inspirational speeches in America. I can't remember who it's by. I've
Oh,
listened
oh, we
to,
know the author,
yeah, and
a former
they're
colleague of ours.
talking about how speeches have changed throughout time. And I was just wondering how your take was about how has the soundbite become more important um than the actual speech in the time of nonstop news and social media, and how you feel the speech has changed throughout your career.
Great
And
question.
let's add into that also Mahet, which is like, how do you make something memorable, and how do you do this without AI these days?
Yeah. It's great questions, and no doubt it's changed. So, you know, when I first got started, it was Barack Obama was really inspirational speaker. His speeches like took time to write them. People took the 25 minutes to sit and listen. But even from that 2008 to when he left office, even for him, the attention span and the coverage of his speeches sort of dwindled. And then, networks would just take sort of, big chunks of it, but not the whole thing. And so there, we would say you're not writing for the tweet, so it's hard to do that. You are thinking about what the headline is, like what do you want people to sort of think? And then even you go past that, it's much more visual now. So like, is a speech even matter? Is it more just sort of short form video that you can compress what you were going to do in a speech into sort of something that's just more easily digestible? And so those are real challenges. And I think you add into, I don't know how much you guys have talked about sort of how just fragmented not just the media environment is, but the technology environment and how do you break an algorithm that might sort of shape it a certain way. So these are all legit challenges. They're ongoing. I don't think we've solved much, in a way that I think sort of levels the playing field. And the question is whether it should even be level if this is the nature of it. But I do take to heart another thought is, stories are the oldest things we've had, and from the beginning of time. Like this is how we've transmitted information and traditions and stuff. And each phase, there's always been some disruption to how that happens. And so just when I try to tell myself and others, like, just remind yourself, whatever the form it is, whether you're being asked to pitch in front of investors, whether you're in front of your classroom, whether you're writing for somebody else, whether you're speaking for yourself, in the end, like, what's the story I'm trying to tell? Like, really zone in on that as you're going through it. And then what am I trying to accomplish? So, am I trying to motivate or reach a bunch of people? Then what's the best way to do that? Or am I trying to do something else? You sort of ask those kinds of questions, it kind of narrows down like how best to do the thing you're trying to do. But it's no doubt, and this is like the threshold challenge, I think. Anyway, and this is not
Mhm.
just in politics,
I was going to
the
ask
sports
Vinay,
in the
layered
sports
into,
league, yeah, like so,
yeah.
NBA has a media deal. So three companies, it's NBC and Peacock, it's Amazon and ESPN Disney is paying the NBA $75 billion over the next 11 years to show games, so live NBA games. That's just the games. But, the NBA is also competing against, if any of you are, in Minneapolis, like Minnesota's really good. But when the game's on, I don't know, maybe you want to watch your favorite show on Netflix instead of watching the game, or maybe you have the game on background and you're passively doing something else or whatever else. So everyone is sort of competing for that attention and everyone's trying to figure out what's the best way to sort of crack that code and, get people to pay attention and watch, even if their length of watching is shorter or different or more fragmented.
And then, just maybe a quick add on, and then we'll go next to Crystal. Um, we've seen this really interesting dynamic around World Cup where Holland has kind of become world famous or Cape Verde. And a lot of people have asked about the influencer world and the role that that's playing in media and the role of superstars. You're seeing superstars now, former superstars start up podcasts and do other things. Any sort of thoughts on how that world is evolving with the individual as becoming the unique vehicle for communications?
Yeah, I mean, so part of what I did in the 2012 campaign is had to help write for all the surrogates. So that's everyone that's not the president, vice president, or first lady. It's everyone who goes out to say, I support this campaign, here's why. So that's everyone from, you had to get on the call with Jay-Z or Bruce Springsteen's team and say he's going to do this concert in Columbus the day before the election. What do you guys want him to say? And for us, it'd be like, at that point, just say go out and vote, and here's where you can go. You don't need a whole like theory of the case, whatever it is, because then you're exposing them to saying something that could make news and not a good way or whatever. Could it also be a teacher who's about to introduce President Obama to 30,000 people, and she's like, I can speak in front of a classroom, but the idea of going in front of that many people, it just kind of freaks me out. And they have a day notice to do it, so you get on the phone and do that. And so what's changed here is I think is there's a big question about whether celebrity endorsements actually swing in one way or not. I think a more pertinent question is there no doubt their platforms and how they use it. So if you go on their podcast to have the conversation about what the issues are in the campaign, and even if the candidate themselves is not on it, That can be a famous person or influencer or just someone sort of in that universe of influence can do it. I think that is a more sort of focused way to think about the impact that that could have. So rather than just someone tweet, "Hey, I support so and so," it's more like, "Oh, for the next 3 weeks on my show, I'm going to talk about these three issues. I don't know about all the other stuff, but these three I care about, and this is what it is." That actually is much more of a
Mhm.
important way to sort of figure out how to capture that and be part of that conversation.
Mhm. So we got about 20 minutes left. So I'm going to try to jam through and ask everyone to ask one question pretty tightly here. That was a great one to kick us off. Lane and Mahet, I hope I'm saying that right. Please correct me in the chat if I'm not. We want to make sure we do get your names correct. Crystal, you're up. Crystal, we can't hear you. I feel like I'm like that first time radio kind of parser. All right. If Crystal can't say it, I'll say her thing. Crystal is currently at Rochester Institute of Technology. Can you walk me through a specific moment when you've had to lead before you felt ready? What did you do in that moment? And I'll extend it by a little bit of like, what does it look like to have courage in those moments?
Yeah. So there's definitely moments where like, oh shit, this is it. So that's okay. Like all of you should you're gonna face it. Don't let it freak you out. Like whatever got you to that moment, got you that moment. And rather than sort of let it overwhelm you, just like you're there, you take your bearings, you remind yourself what you're there for, and you just you do it. And sometimes, the first few times, yeah, like I don't know, did I do it right? Did I? Oh, and then you're gonna think, oh man, I stumbled. I wish I would have said this or what. It's okay. Like that's human. That's the reps that the DJ's talking about. Like you do it, and that first time is always the hardest, but it gets you that little step of confidence. You're like, oh man, it wasn't as scary as I thought, or it was. I was like, but I did it, and so you just kind of have to do it and put yourself in the position. The hard part is getting yourself in the position to do it. And that's where all these other things come from. Doing the work, talking to people, proving your value, and it was earning that trust to then being there to do it.
Yeah. And the courage component when you're doubting it because everyone's looking at you. You've been in the room where you're the only voice. Oftentimes you're the only person. Maybe it's because of your background, maybe it's because your ethnicity, but you're the only one and everyone is against you, but you need to have courage. Where do you find your courage from?
So there's this thing about, who are you doing it for? And so when you're in that moment, you realize it's just not you. You're there as sort of the vessel to kind of represent a lot of issues and a lot of people. And so I take the courage from that. Like that responsibility is part of the job, and the courage is to sort of exercise it for those people who are not. And so you're there and you're there for that reason, that purpose, and you just, so that's how I think about it. Who are you courageous for?
Great. Next up is Alan.
Hi, Vinay. I'm Alan. I'm currently a grad student at University of Chicago. Just want to I'll also introduce myself. I'm also involved with the Institute of Politics at University of Chicago. So it was founded by Dale Rashlod, who is
Sure, yeah.
chief of staff. So yeah, I was also a voting ambassador earlier when I was undergrad, also at U Chicago. I studied computer science. So just want to understand your perspective on technology and policy. That's something I'm very interested in. I hope to eventually write policy, well, not just write, but understand policy and technology and finance, like the intersection of all three across disciplines. Yeah, love to get more of your perspective.
Yeah, I would say the best people I've ever worked with aren't just whip smart on their issue. They are able to sort of take all the other things and in 5 minutes, digest what the complicated thing is, explain it to somebody who is trying to figure out what to do, give a recommendation, acknowledge here are the pros and cons, but here's what I'm going to do. So I think for you to really think about each of those things you mentioned are very can be very technical, and you have to have a technical kind of understanding of how it works. And then you got to step back, and depending on who you're trying to convince or talk to, obviously know your audience, but even for super sophisticated tech people, as DJ knows, you sometimes still need to simplify it. You got 5 minutes, you got 10 minutes in front of a group
The president
who's
does not want a 50-minute explanation
yeah,
or has
either
time
present
for
or
it.
it's a group of people who are about to invest a bunch of money in you,
Mhm.
or you're trying to convince a reporter to write a story a certain way, or you might be a teacher one day and you got to explain to your students. Like, I think when I say the best, I think the most effective people I worked with are people who are really, they know the policy, the ins and outs, or whatever the technicalities are. And then they can step back and zoom out. What's the big picture? What am I trying to explain? And then here's what I think about it. Here's why I think this course of action. So I really try to think about that as you're sort of fitting all those things in as you're thinking about your career. And I think you'll go a lot further than just feeling you got to know this only. And then you can write a great white paper that's 35 pages that it'll be hard for a lot of people to read. But if you're able to translate that into something that's digestible, way more effective. And, I think for you to be the best advocate you can be.
Mhm. I'll just quickly plug Stephanie has her session on storytelling and how to pitch. You need to have that 30-second pitch because the amount of times like somebody says, "Hey, I don't have time, but walk with me to the car," and that's your shot. You got to have it ready. They're not going to wait. The car is not waiting. And so, what's your form of that? And then the other one I'll just emphasize, Alan, there is a weird thing of the weirder you are, the more multidisciplinary you are, the more effective you are going to be at some of these roles that sit in the intersection of things. I want to get to next. Who's up? Andrea. Andrea, our recycling pro
Yes,
and computer vision.
yes. My name is Andrea. I'm in
Oh, I
Central
apologize,
Illinois.
Andrea. I should know this by now. Andrea, not Andrea.
Thank you. I'm in Central Illinois, but I just graduated with my master's from Georgia Tech. My question is about suggestions on how to best advocate in the government. And this specifically comes from because I was recently, like last week, asked to join the advocacy committee for my local Society of Women Engineers. So whether it's a group like that or you have a specific issue, and I think some of your last answer does go to this, but I still wanted to ask it. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Starting local is always a good way, especially early in your career, just to get some experience. And so that in particular, it's all right, so there's a group and you advocate around a certain issue. I think the value of where you're all coming in is, not that DJ and I are old, though DJ is older than I am, just for the record, is you bring a lot of experience of threshold questions of your generation that are really important for these organizations to know and understand. And so I think your value there is substantively as, your technical background, but also generationally. And there you can think about yourself beyond your actual issue. It's just sort of here's what me and my friends, this is the life we're thinking or living right now. This is what is are going through our minds. And then the advocacy part is really know who are you trying to convince? Like what is the issue in front of you? Who has decision making power over that issue? And then how best to tackle that, how do you reach them? When you reach them, what arguments do you think are most persuasive? Because not all arguments work for everybody. And then how do you build this public support around it? So it's just very elemental, but a lot of people forget. They kind of like jump to one thing and they miss this part and really just like you would, like, engineering, you got to go through your steps. Like you got to, if you can't do this, you can't do the whole thing. So I think kind of use that skill set both in advocacy as well.
Mhm. Great. Great question, Andrea. Michael.
Hi, my name is Michael. I go to Penn State and I am a finance student, but I do a lot of work in just business overall, tech and law. And I currently am doing a lot of AI work for the school. So I'm the director of AI enablement and education for business fraternities. So it's great, but I want to know what actually makes someone a great speaker because we were on a webinar with Jeff Weiner, and I always listen to Oprah Winfrey and Michelle Obama talk, and there's such precision to their words and how they're able to deliver it. And I was wondering, how does someone build that vocabulary, and how can I develop the same precision myself?
Yeah, it's a similar thing to the other one. Just keep trying it, keep doing it. I think in all settings, not just don't wait for the Zoom. Just when you're in class, when you're talking to your friends, like even if you're goofing around with your friends, be like, hey guys, like for the next 10 minutes, I want to like pretend that I'm in front of this board and this is what I want to do. Or I'm gonna go to the provost's office. Let me run through you what I'm gonna try. Just like find all the different ways you can do it. Practice in front of the mirror. Like that's the age-old way of, actors would do this often, right? So when no one's around, they're like, all right, I'm gonna read my lines, like is what I do. So it's just a rep. And then it's just you got to believe in yourself. The other thing is I learned from sports too, like watch film, like record yourself, have your friends record you while you're talking, and like pick your things out. Like, are you looking away from the person when you're supposed to talk to them? Are you too much hands like when you're talking that's distracting? Like you'll pick up the cues that, and then the next time you go, like just work on that. Just film, go study the film of yourself
Mhm.
doing it, and because I promise you, that's what these other folks do. Like Oprah, yeah, she was on TV for decades, and she would watch the film. How does she do? Her producers say, "Hey, on this segment, you kind of did this, whatever." Michelle Obama after speech, like, "Yeah, you did great." I mean, I know like this is what they do. They like you did great, but maybe this you do over here. Before they speak, they're practicing. The practice of a speech isn't just reading it; it is the presentation of it also.
Mhm.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I know we said 45 minutes. Are we
I'm
able to
I'm
get you
good
to
to
the
go.
top?
I'm
Okay,
good as long as you want. So I'm good. Don't worry.
great. Okay, so we'll keep going. I just also want to emphasize, like, find your voice, and the way to find your voice, like, the amount of, like, I'm always shocked at how rarely people are willing to practice in front of their friends, or their friends to be really good, helpful critiques, or critiques of their writing or of their speaking, or role play on an interview. Like, what sucks? Going into the interview the first time of a job you would want, and then flopping because you didn't, and having regrets. And if you had said it out loud, you had practiced, you'd gotten beaten up in a comfortable, healthy way, then you would have gotten good at it. The way I honestly got good at it was I went through exactly this. I had an amazing set of classmates who we were required to constantly give our talks, our practice talks to each other before the professor, and we beat each other up in the greatest, kindest way. And we all became really good because of that. And the same with Jeff Weiner, the amount we practice speaking before going out on the road for LinkedIn or other things, that was a real thing. People didn't see how much work went on behind the scenes on this
Yeah.
stuff.
So real quick on that point, 100% more, 1,000%. You gotta just kind of find your voice. Also, is like, what do you feel confident talking about? I think your generation, your class in general, is like, it's okay not to know about something. I think sometimes there's an expectation you have to have an opinion on everything right away, and that's it. It's okay to take a beat, think about it, learn about it. If it's interesting to you, great. Doesn't mean you have to be the master of it and then go out and speak about it. But find the things that you feel confident already talking about, because that exudes already a first step. You kind of already know it. Now it's just like tactically how to do it. So
Mhm. Great. Alex.
Hey Vinay, my name is Alex, and I'm a student at College of Marin, which is my local community college. And I
great.
kind of come into this political topic as more of an observer, and this is just something I've always wondered. So, President Trump obviously has like a very unorthodox style of communication, like whether it be like, sorry to bring it up, I know, like I feel like it's kind of
That's
like
right.
saying Voldemort,
You
but
can't you
like
can't debate that he's been effective.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So he's been super effective, obviously, with this like kind of unorthodox style of communication and speaking. What do you think that effectiveness says about our voter base today? And do you think that will be imitated or copied in the future?
On that last point, I don't know. We'll see. I think the jury is being tested on whether that's the right way. I think what makes him effective is like that's also him. And so I think that's what comes across and how he communicates. Like that's just him and that's what you get. I think if you're trying to replicate it and that's not you, then it's not going to be effective.
Mhm.
And I think if we're seeing some other debates right now about who should be running or not, and does vetting matter? I don't know. I think it does, but it
Mhm.
depends on who you're trying to convince and who that voter base is. And so it kind of gets back to these threshold questions. As much as there's change going on around you, it is still some basic things about like who are you and what are you about? And if you're choosing to do something that's not really authentic to you, then people are going to notice that. Whether you're a candidate, maybe you run for office, Alex, one day, or maybe you're going to build a business one day, or whether you're going to whatever you're going to do, like if you're not feeling it, like you might be good at it. The thing about it is you all can be great at a lot of things. You can be very good at a lot of things. And even though a lot of those things may not still be the thing like really like gets you motivated to wake up every day. So I think right now that's the test. Like put yourself in these different situations, learn from different people, like take different kinds of classes, like go to different lectures when you're at that school, you see who comes through. You're at that stage where you can be that sponge but then go back and be like, all right, like what do I think? Like a lot of times we don't give you guys the chance, or we don't give ourselves the chance to then ask, like, do I even agree with that? I know I'm supposed to, but is that what I really think? I know that's what the experts are saying, but trust me, like like DJ and I, maybe we're considered experts, maybe for some people, but yeah, we're just people who just like through a lot of like trial and error, more error than trial, and the people who you think are like, wow, they're just people, and they start off where you're at, and so just keep that in mind too. But yeah, I think it's effective for him because that is also him, and if it's not you, then it's really hard to replicate, I think.
Alex, just to emphasize, every person who is like a big time speechwriter, president, or sorry, person speech giving a speech, including President Trump, they always come off stage and they're like, "How'd I do?" The amount of insecurity from everybody, that's a human thing. And so everyone's always wondering how I did. How did I feedback? So people take it different ways. Um, Great question, Alex, and kudos for Marin. Always big fan out there. We got to Alex Neha. Do we have Neha? All right, Jared. I know I told you to come to this section, Jared. So I'm not sure if I remember saying your name right. Correct me on this, but I also love that your question about the NBA. So love for you to go.
He wants you to read it because his mic doesn't
Oh,
work.
okay. His mic doesn't work. All right. I have a question about your experience working for Adam Silver. Also, how do you think it's going to be? How do you think is it? Also, what do you think is going to be the next big thing the NBA that the NBA is going to adopt besides AI?
Oh, so there's
Is
some
it because
structural,
streaming
yeah.
was adopted, technology? Like, where's the NBA going? I think is what he's asking.
Yeah, so when you say AI, there's in the NBA there's broad application. That's everything from officiating to the fan experience to health and wellness to how the game is broadcast or shown, whether it's streamed or broadcast. So, NBA gets pitched by all the different companies that maybe you want to work for one day, or maybe one day you're going to invent a company that does it. So they constantly get pitched from all the people who are sort of doing this work. So that like any other business is sort of going through that and what it will be. And then there's like league wise, they're talking about expansion to more cities here in the United States. They're thinking about launching a league in Europe, which kind of shows sort of both the interest and the global reach from it. And then I just think you're going to see sports in general is still kind of one that's heavily invested in because it is as fractured as things might seem in the country. People still like gravitate towards that. Even if you're not a core sports fan, there's sort of this cultural kind of thing, sense of belonging to something, believing in it, sharing in it. You saw if you're a New York Knicks fan, even if you weren't, it's hard not to feel that that was happening or think about your hometown, whatever that might be. So I think that is a kind of just how
How do
technology in
you
general is
how do
going to
you
go. And
path?
then,
How do you just in 30 seconds? Because I want to get to Durga's question to end
yeah.
on this session on. Um, how do you path the delta between commercial interest and cultural relevancy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets back to even for the NBA, you got to remember like what are you about? And for them, it's a game. It's a basketball league, which it is a business, but it's a game that has like been around for 130 years, has a deep cultural attachment in a lot of places around the country. So you kind of think about both. Like you got to grow, you're a business, you got to run a business. In order to run it well, you need to make money. In order to make money, you need to make sure the product is really good, people like it and care about it, and will spend money on it. So that's a business pick a widget. That's what a widget company has to figure out. Here, they just had to really be protective of like, is it taking away from the core element of our thing? For us, it is that game. That game is built on trust and integrity, and we have to maintain that utmost. So that's kind of how you kind of square that the need to grow, but also the need to like really protect
Knowing
what
your
you care
true
about.
north.
Yeah.
knowing what your true north is.
Yeah.
Durga, you're up. You got a great question here.
Oh,
And
thank
apologies to everyone else we couldn't get to.
Okay, so hi, I'm Durga. I'm a rising junior pursuing a bachelor's in computer science engineering at ASU. And my question is, how do you get through the hard part of your job while maintaining that passion? Like, do you have any specific tips to get through that like slump? Thank
Yeah. So it's a great question.
Great question.
Also, I love the background. I hope you're actually on a beach somewhere, but even not, it makes me feel like one. So, DJ and I have talked about this a lot, even when we were going through really hard times. So, like really stressful situations. And while that comes with the territory where it's hard not for it to take a toll on you emotionally, physically. So there are just some basic things like, sleep is really important. And I know like you guys feel like you can go on forever, but I think at your age, like if you can set some good habits around your health and your wellness, like the payoff when you're older and then when you are in those moments, huge. Like I think it's such a I wish when I was your age I felt even though you feel invincible, you're like I wish I picked up those habits early. So that's just sort of like it applies for everyone. And then in the really stressful, how do you handle it? For me, I had my wife and my kids. So while like being away from them took a toll, given how hard the work is, coming home was sort of a release. I encourage everyone on my team to make sure like you live your life too. Like whatever you're doing, you put your heart and your work into it, but it's not everything. In the end, it's like your life. And for as much uncertainty there is, the one thing that's certain is it's your life, and hopefully you have as much control over it as and that includes like doing great things in your work, but also like, find your friends, make your friends. Like you like somebody, ask them out on a date. If they say no, okay. Like if great, great, great. Like I mean, you have your life, and the life part of all of this work is sometimes is the least studied and sort of the less taught. And I think for us, having been through this, is you learn that those are the things that kind of get you through. They keep you grounded. So for me, when I was, especially in the last 4 years, is like I had a whole fragmented set of friends. I had friends who have known me since I was a kid, don't care anything about what I'm doing, and they'll send these ridiculous texts unrelated to anything
They're gonna
going
give you.
on.
They're gonna.
But
They're
like,
gonna hold your
and
feet to the fire.
it gets really crazy. I don't ever respond, but when you come out of a meeting and you see it, you're like, all right, like it kind of like. So you also helps to like have your crew like you pick up the people who like they don't care, they care about you enough that they don't care who you are. And so they'll call you out if they think your ego is getting ahead of you. They'll encourage you when you're down. And that doesn't mean those are your friends only that phase of your life. Like I have friends I grew up with when I was a kid, I have friends in high school, friends in college, friends you make it they all kind of have a piece of you that is necessary. And so these are all the kind of life things that help you when times are really tough. Like DJ is he's part of my crew. Like there's this thing too, a friend of mine taught me about sort of root friends. Root friends are the ones that are like deep down, like they help you grow and they help you stay, when things are stormy and hot and hard, they keep you steady. And so that's a real important part of like how you develop your life and grow and all that stuff. And the last thing too is I great advice I got from someone very well known, has been making a lot of things you've seen for a very long time, started off when he was your age. And his advice to me when I was leaving office was the key to his longevity is, after you do something, you put everything into it, you're like really tired. Maybe you studied really hard for that exam, you had this really big presentation, and like it was hard, there's like whatever it is, like, and you just feel spent. You're like, I'm done. I need like weeks and months to recover, or let's go out, get a drink, whatever it might be. And then the danger there is like you're so spent that it's hard to recharge and get going again. So he said like the key to his longevity is um after that hard thing is rather than feel famished, like you're so just spent and you just like can't getting on, you feel hungry still. You feel hungry for the next thing. That doesn't mean you don't take the time to recharge and do all that. You do those things, but stay hungry. And that also helps you handle the stressful things that you don't let the stressful thing overwhelm you so much that it stops you from like just staying hungry and keep going. So that's kind of it's actually more of a life thought I have, now that I'm in my 40s, but like really having to look back is like as hungry and ambitious as you all are, like you have your life, that's the thing you can control and like
Mhm.
live it, enjoy it, experience it. It makes you better professional too. Like you bring all these different life experiences to the things that your perspective is widened and you have like a different part of your life that you're experiencing as well.
Benai, this is amazing. I'm just going to take 30 seconds to tell a quick story that might embarrass you, but I think is
Yeah.
appropriate. When we were in the Obama administration, when there's this question of representation, this gets to a bunch of the things that are out there, and this is how important people like Vinay, Vinay are to this. Is there what is representation, and how do you make sure people are seen? And there was a question around Diwali and the White House and what could be done, what couldn't be done. And I was one who really made the first real big celebration happen at the vice president's house. But there was a question of what we could do more. And so he, behind the scenes, rallied people and figured out how to make it seen. When people's voice, they weren't in the room, when people couldn't be there to advocate, he still figured out a way to hold voice and allow people to stand out with their ideas being represented. And that is why President Obama actually lit the dia for the very first time in the Oval Office, the very first time that had happened, and giving that representation. He did that for so many other cultural groups as well. I could fill the hours with all those stories, having seen it firsthand. And so all of this is just to say what a special opportunity this is to have someone like him really give this time for you. So hopefully you've kind of seen this. Again, you've really taken this and inspired it. I also want to just emphasize today, I'm going to see a bunch of you, I hope, here in Boston with office hours in person. And then later this afternoon, you also have the amazing Leslie Fine giving out her amazing advice, and another person who I turn to for advice and think is really an inspiration. And so make sure to go to her session. And then we got demos. And so we're here in week 1 of cohort 2, and you guys are all crushing it. I know it's also going to be very overwhelming, but just big kudos for all being here. And Vinay, thank you. You're just a brother from another mother, and
It's
so
all
I just
right.
appreciate you.
Can I just say one more thing? So a couple parting sort of
Of
piece
course.
here is thanks for DJ for doing this. What DJ is doing for you, he has done for so many people at all ages, at all stages of their career. It's really incredible, and some really amazing moments I've had is because of him. So in the last 4 years, his son and him came out when the Warriors came, the Golden State Warriors came for the White House visit and I'm making final edits. I'm like, Vade, what do you think? Will this line work? And he's like, what do you mean? Like, I was like, no, I gotta go upstairs right now and hand him the president these final remarks. You're more of a Warriors fan than I am, so like, what do you think? So he gets it, and he's able. We get him right in the aisle, and I didn't tell our digital team to do this, but maybe DJ will send the video around. Vade's like right in the aisle as Steph Curry walks by and like gives him a high five, and is like really great. But there are these moments where like you get to share it. You have a choice. Like you do it on your own, and you get to share it. And like the best parts of these experiences, you're gonna feel it too, is like you're able to share it with other people and people you know and people you will never meet and never, know what they're up to. But that's like a gift that you guys should think about. Every day, whatever your day is an amazing day. Like you get to start something, build something, create it, do whatever, and just keep at it. And then two, just technical thing. Ones, I'm happy to answer any of the questions that were left in comments if you guys want to send it to me. And
Yeah,
the
Kathy,
last
can
thing
we grab
is,
them and then we'll try if you can grab them for me.
yeah, so the last thing, so I was someone who did not talk to reporters a lot. I just like that was not my jam, and I was not a public profile kind of person, even in a job that typically does that. But I was asked to comment on by the New York Times, The Athletic does a sports section of the New York Times. I was asked to comment on Roger Federer gave a commencement speech at Dartmouth a couple years
Mhm.
ago. And Roger Federer, for those of you who don't know, is considered one of the greatest tennis players ever, and really just a class guy. The way he plays makes it look very easy and simple. And while everybody else is like grunting and running, he just looks effortless. And so in the speech, so the New York Times, they were like, "Hey, you've played the sport, you've worked in sports, and you've written for the president. Like, what do you think is great about his speech? You guys should all watch it. You should watch it more than read it because I think he does a good job in delivery."
Mhm.
And he says a lot of things in it. And one of the things he says is like, for all the matches he won, he's considered one of the greatest players ever. He said he won 53% of the points that he played. So here's the greatest player ever, winning just more than the majority of points to win, 53%. He said the distance between that and losing is like that. And what that doesn't entail is all the work that goes into it. And what I commented on is both on how he delivered the speech, and it's a good way to think of a pitch or whatever else you're thinking about. It's a very simple thing. Here's like three things I'm going to talk about, and here's what they are. Here are the lessons, and here's what it is. And what I commented on was practice. So I grew up in Ohio. There's a tournament there that all the top players. So since I was a kid, I would just stay at the practice courts. I actually wouldn't watch the matches. I would just stay at the practice courts and watch these guys hours just beforehand, hours on hours. They'd miss a lot. They'd keep going. So here's Roger Federer, the greatest of all time, saying, I only won 53% of my points. And people say I make it look so easy, but they don't see the hours and hours, the failure in practice, the misses. I get upset. They think I just keep my cool, but man, like I have these feelings too. And it's just a lesson for you too. Like you're gonna all be great. You all have the capacity to be great. You're already doing, further along than so many of us ever were at that age. But just like keep at it. Like keep practicing. It's okay if you make a mistake, learn from it, grow from it, but keep going. Because like then you make when you make it effortless, that means you're finding that joy, that sweet spot. And that's how you do it. And so I recommend put that in the thing. You should watch it, read it. I have the
Mhm.
time. You put the Times review of what I said about it in there
Yeah,
because
we'll find it.
other people commented on it, and
Mm.
it's just sort of good when you're thinking about when you're doubting yourself. Like go do that. Go read it, watch it, find some inspiration, and go from there.
This is amazing advice. So if you see other people in the Discord or other friends, and they weren't able to make it today, please make sure they watch this, because it's so important. If you have a family member or relative that you think could benefit, make sure they watch it too. I think that's how important this is. We're not
Yeah, and feel free
gatekeeping
to
here. We want
DJ
this
has
to.
my stuff. So if you're interested in other things, my email is he can connect us and happy to help.
Yeah, awesome. All right, thank you so much, and
No
see you
problem.
all either in person or at Leslie Fine's one, or in one of those pods where we're just having our chit chats late at night or sometimes during the day. So thank you all. Appreciate you, man, and more
Yep. See you
soon.
guys. Yep.
All right, cheers, everyone.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you very much.